I'll call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Moore.
Present.
Here.
Steelgrave. Here. Vining.
Excused.
Here.
So we have one item on our agenda for this evening, and the manager may have additional comment, but Manager Robinson.
This morning, or this evening, I guess it is now, we have the review of the parking lot improvements at the River Raisin National Battlefield Park, Education and Visitor Center. This is the project to redo as part of a CIP project back 22-23. And this is the design that we had that we want to bring to you before we accept the bids and what have you for this project. And I'd like to invite the city engineer and the director of economic development to the podium to be able to explain what you're looking at.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Mark Cochran, Director of Economic and Community Development.
Patrick Lewis, Director of Engineering and Public Services.
This is kind of fun. I think this is a good representation of how much cross-collaboration goes between the two departments and throughout the city on projects such as this. But as the city manager indicated, as approved in the capital improvements program in 22-23 was the replacement of the parking lot at 333 North Dixie Highway, which is the Education and Visitor Center for the River Raisin National Battlefield Park, as well as the National Battlefield Foundation, the Tourism Bureau, and other tenants. And so tonight we're bringing just a review for you of the final design. This project is currently out for bid, and we're awaiting the bids to come back in the next several weeks before we bring a contract for you to consider to begin construction. But what you'll see on the screen in front of you and on the screens, the big screens, are a layout of the new parking lot design. Some of the most significant changes, you'll notice it is a little bit larger. You can see on the south end, it does, the parking lot is expanded into the property on the south over where the existing bike trail is now. The reason for that, and you'll notice throughout the parking lot, there's some additional bump outs, islands, and green space that are incorporated in order to meet our zoning code. And so in order to not reduce the number of parking spots, we had to enlarge the footprint of the parking lot itself just a little bit on the north side. The trailway that goes along the existing south side of the parking lot will be moved as well to get visitors and users of the trailway along North Dixie Highway from the trail up to the building. I will say part of this project too, we not only looked at the parking lot, but we did a master plan for the site as a whole. And so you'll see some elements in here that aren't actually part of the parking lot project as proposed. But you'll see some elements such as on the south side of the building, in the southwest corner, there's a fenced-in area that is proposed for a game area for the National Park Service and the Foundation to do education interpretive opportunities for youth related to Native American games like lacrosse and field hockey and tell the history of those. There's also a patio on the front of the building, a large gathering spot. You'll see that circle on the south side. And then on the right side, on the north side of Mason Run Drain, in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, right at the corner of Dixie and Noble, there's an overflow parking area with improvements that have been identified, such as fencing and landscaping, though that's not being done immediately. And then also some drain work. So the main components you'll see in the parking lot itself is, rather than the parking spots coming out from the building going east and west, you'll see that the parking rows now go north and south. The reason for that, when there are trains stopped on some of the train tracks, what we experience is a lot of people trying to cut through the parking lot at a pretty high rate of speed because there are no impediments, no parking islands and things of that sort, making it pretty unsafe for pedestrians. And so to limit the amount of cut-through traffic that we see, we decided to turn the parking spaces. Going up the middle of the parking rows, you'll notice there is a parking island and those have sidewalks. So one of the things that our zoning code requires is to show a direct access from the parking lot for pedestrians to the front of the building. And you'll see the crosswalk just in front of the building as well. And so those are the main improvements. We also have street light improvement or the parking lot light improvements. The existing ones are out of date, and so we've worked with both DTE as well as the Heritage Corridor Advisory Commission to make recommendations on updated streetlights in the parking lot.
And you do on tonight's consent agenda have an agreement with DTE to install those. We wanted to get that going. So part of the reason we're bringing this to you tonight is we know we have the first step of that agreement. So I just want to call that out, that that's in front of you tonight as well.
And then the other improvement on the north side of the building, right now where the access is off of Noble, there's some additional parking that's being paved and installed that'll be identified for Park Service employees. In the recent lease agreement that City Council approved, I think there's 38 parking spaces that have to be designated for National Park Service employees and volunteers. And so right now, some of them park up there anyway, but it's rather unimproved. And so you'll see there's some spots right off the drive aisle and then on the north side of the drive aisle on the edge of Mason Run Drain. In the northwest corner of the building, you'll see there's some very long parking spaces. Those have been identified for RV and school bus parking. But this will be the pathway that school buses, if you've been out there when they have field trips, there's at least 6 or 7, sometimes 10 buses at a time that are all arriving at the same time, dropping kids off. And so we wanted to make sure that there was a safe place for that to occur. And so that area between Mason Run Drain and the building on the north side is identified for school bus drop-off and parking as well, separate from the parking lot. And so those were most of the improvements. You'll also see and the entrance off of North Dixie Highway, rather than having one drive and one curb cut, there are actually now two entryways. If you've been out there for large special events, there can be some traffic conflict in trying to enter and leave. And so with the new direction of the configuration of the parking spaces themselves, we had to make that adjustment for North Dixie Highway, which will also impact the landscape islands in the middle of North Dixie as well that Patrick can address.
Yeah, about a third of them are coming out. That's basically, we thought we'd do it as part of this contract. The 2 drive approaches in there are not actually going to be built with this phase because we have some of the large utility poles that we'll need to move first. So we'll probably have to come back, unless they can get those moved by the end of the construction, we'll probably have to come back and then just put in those approaches. So that's really the only thing that we're having to defer from this contract, just based on utility coordination. I think you kind of hit all the high points there. The median island is the one thing that you're going to see a decent change on, just because that's fairly significant in length. It'll be cut down, which quite frankly, my staff is challenged to maintain those as they are. Just basically, it's difficult to operate in traffic. So we're probably going to be looking at some alternate surfacing on those as we move forward too. Maybe some raised tree wells to keep the salt from getting in, and then sort of a minimal landscape versus what we have today. So
the other component that we forgot to highlight in the southwest corner of the parking lot, near where that Circle Gathering Plaza is, there are 4 or 5 parking spaces that have been set aside for future electric vehicle charging stations. The National Park Service and Michigan Department of Transportation have a program that they're working on right now, Mobility Challenge, where the Park Service and MDOT are working with all of the national park sites in the state of Michigan to fund and install future mobility operations, whether that's EV charging, bike share, some of those items. And so the city won't be installing them, because that's through the Mobility Challenge with the Park Service and MDOT. But what we do have as part of this project is the conduit to feed the electrical off the west side of the building, so that all of the improvements that we're making now, when they do come back to install the EV charging stations, if that's the direction we go, we don't have to tear up the sidewalks, the parking lot, and the pathways if they and when they move forward with the EV charging stations in the future.
Just stopped abruptly. So I think you're looking for questions.
I have nothing
That's
further
all.
to add to Mr. Cochran's very adequate presentation. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
So where did you say the other driveway is going to be? Is it going to be on Dixie Highway or,
Yeah,
I don't see it on the map.
there's one that's near just to the right of the existing drive aisle. I know it's a little hard to see. And then
Oh, I see
one
it.
at the south end of the parking lot entrance at the south boundary along the field on the south side.
I see it's just gray. Got it.
So temporarily, there'll just be one driveway until those poles move, and then that one
Right.
will be eliminated and the other two put in. But we're going to do the median work first, just figuring that makes more sense. While we've got the major traffic control operation, let's go ahead and get that knocked out.
Thank you, Ryan. Compliance is what we're doing with this, correct? What type of pavement are we going to be doing? Asphalt, concrete, total rebuild? Do we have to go back through and redrain it all? I mean, what are we looking at here?
Mostly, yes. It's asphalt surfacing for the most part. There are areas of concrete. There are actually some raised speed humps, or raised crosswalks is essentially what you've got. So everywhere you see a crosswalk on there, that's actually raised, and that's designed to keep those speeds down, keep cut through traffic down, because we didn't feel like we could eliminate the Noble Avenue entrance. So barring that, we want to make it more difficult to go through. So mostly asphalt pavement. There are we've got a slightly thicker section for the drive aisles than we do for the parking stalls, but it's essentially largely a rebuild because we have to alter the drainage pattern. So there's going to be new stone base and everything put in there. So it's effectively a reconstruction surfacing in asphalt.
Now, and I understand that we need to have the compliance because this is going to be used for not just for the battlefield, but for the different existing things that we may have in the arena there for projects or whatever people want to rent it out for, correct? Am I
Yeah, correct.
assuming
And
that?
every December, the Michigan Robotics Competition has been renting out the South Event Center, which is generating revenue for the care of the facility. And the parking lot is full whenever they're here because they're coming from all over the state of Michigan, school buses and families. So there's not an empty parking spot available at that time.
Life expectancy of the improvements we're making.
Well, that always varies slightly by what they are, but 20 years.
Roundabout.
20 years. I mean, most of the that's the surfacing, but the curbs, the sidewalks, and everything else will be significantly longer. I mean, the pavement, typically asphalt pavements require some kind of at least moderate preventative maintenance treatment every 10 or so years would be like a seal coat or microsurfacing, but you're talking about resurfacing 20 or 25. You can get, for comparison, the parking lot was built in 1997. The one that we're operating off of now.
Okay.
So you can see the condition of it. So that's about what you would be looking at for your life expectancy.
Thank you. One last question, if you don't mind. The electric stations that they're going to have there for the EV charging, is that a pay service, I'm assuming?
So that'll be run by the Park Service and MDOT, and they haven't selected the vendor or put together the program yet. They did go out to bid and requested proposals from different companies, and the city was part of those discussions to give our input. They're working with 3 different vendors right now, so we don't have those details yet.
It's out of
but
our hands, more or
It
less.
is,
Right,
yeah.
okay,
We
thank
won't
you.
run and operate them.
Thank you. What? Mike?
Speaking of the South Event Center, in some of the conversations we've had, like to see all kinds of events come to the city there. What is the total parking going to be for the new lot?
It'll be about the same as it is now, plus the unimproved overflow parking, and so I think it's enough to accommodate about 1,000 people.
Yeah, I meant to brush up. It's around, I want to say it's around 200, roughly.
It's assuming everybody rides together, but carpool.
Other questions? All right. Mark, Patrick,
Thank you.
Yeah, and the plan for the bids are due May 20th. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So assuming that they're favorable, we would bring those back to you on the June 3rd council meeting for approval.
Your Honor, I have one more question.
Yes, Brian.
Expectation on the bid price, what are you thinking?
Cost estimate is 1.9 million.
Ouch.
I've been saying that a lot the last few years.
Thank you.
So we had budgeted through the CIP program, but we also had some conversations with the city manager and finance director to look at the amount above what was budgeted in CIP and bonded for. Are there other places we can pull some of the funds for, like the the island work can come out of local streets, major street fund, right?
Yep.
The trail work can come out of the capital improvements trail millage. So we've looked at, in addition to CIP, where those pieces can be funded from.
Just want to be a little careful about some of that funding though, because we do want to use improvements throughout the city, not
Yep.
just for the parking lot,
Yes.
like they're intended to be used for. So appreciate the comments. Thank you.
I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. Manager Robinson?
Well, I guess this could be up to council's decision. I was going to, the other presentation that was going to be here tonight, they withdrew, so they're not here. And we were either going to use the 10 minutes we got left here to discuss and get a quick update with the packets I gave you regarding the MDOT I-75 bridge project. We can either discuss that now, or I was going to deal with it as a presentation in our presentation section of the regular agenda, being that the EPA is not going to be here for the presentation that was originally scheduled for that.
So thinking there may be some conversations related to the discussion with the MDOT's proposal, I-75. But before I get there, so we have an item that's on the agenda that they're asking to be pulled. Is that correct?
Yes, the item I'm going to ask when it's time for approval of our regular agenda is to remove item 4643. It was going to be a US EPA update on river status in the 2.5 mile section of the river. And in discussing this with the people from the EPA, they have results that they're waiting on. And the reason they scheduled it this time was because of an invitation from Cody at that time. And they were just going to give an update, but they say that by fall, if they move this to the fall, they'd be able to have a complete update to be able to give the entire council and Cody at that time.
So 46, 43, if you're asking to have that removed, it's not necessarily being postponed to another date because we don't know the date, correct?
Right.
Okay, and it sounds like you're asking for, I guess it'd be a communication from the manager regarding the River Raisin Bridge and Interstate 75 revitalization project.
Right.
So that's what the manager's asking. I'll see if there's any questions from council for him on those two items. So we can set the agenda right from the start. I'm not saying we can't start now, but if we start, we're not going to finish, I don't believe, within 5 minutes. So, all right. Any other questions for the manager on the agenda? There might be. If not,
Nope, just make note that the packets that you were given on your desk includes the letter that was authored by the city and the mayor on May 1st, as well as the discussions and work session information and a letter that was issued to MDOT in 2019 for your review, if you'd like to review some.
right. So you have a few minutes to review that, I guess, if as we move forward. So maybe you want to glance at those since it's a communication being added, chance to read it or review it rather than just having it read by the manager. All right. Any other questions? I think we're done for now. At this time, I'll close the work session. And we'll be back at 7:30. Thank you. We'll call the city council meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore. Felder. Hader. Stilgrave. Vining.
Excused.
Me.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
In our deliberations and discussions this evening, may our efforts promote the good of the residents of this city and all who visit.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, first item, please.
The next item on the agenda is approval of regular agenda.
Actually, I know the Manager Robinson, you had some items on the agenda you wish to discuss, correct?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm asking that we amend the agenda to remove item 4643, the presentation from the U.S. EPA, from the agenda. Apparently, they are doing testing in at the 2.5-mile area of the River Raisin, which has been deemed the area of concern, and all of their testing is not back yet. And they said by fall, and the reason they were scheduled for here is that Cody our committee on the environment had requested them to come and give an update that they usually do every year to 2 years. And so they were going to come at that request, but being that their results are going to be a little bit more solidified because they're doing other testing in the area, they recommended to come in the fall and they would have a better, more complete analysis and report out to council and to the Commission on the Environment. So I'm asking that be removed. And then also just a very quick update from me to replace that section on the agenda in the presentation section of the agenda for a quick update on the MDOT grant application for the I-75 bridge reconstruction over the River Raisin.
Thank you. And you provided some information correspondence for the council prior to that, so you
Did.
discussed that. Okay, if there's no questions, Councilman Moore?
Just make a motion to approve the agenda as written with the removal of item number 4643 under presentations, communications, and public hearings. And note that we are going to have a presentation with a number given by the clerk regarding the MDOT grant application for I-75 corridor.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave, to approve the regular agenda with the two items mentioned. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Yes.
Felder. Yes. Hader. Stilgrave.
Yes. Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $1,787,939.90, 1787939.90.
Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda council wishes to have discussion? I see we have a couple of people that may have seen for a while, but consent agenda, those items are voted on collectively, but if there's an item, I'll say at this time, is there's an item on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion and a separate vote, you're welcome to state what that number is. Any items from those present? Seeing none, motion would be in order. Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Moore. All items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Hader. Yes. Stilgrave. Yes. Germaine.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
I'm going to go through the items that are on the agenda for that section, and then we'll add the item that was added, all right?
Yes.
So the next item on the agenda would be item 4640, public hearing, proposed ordinance 24-004, an update to the sign ordinance. And there are no comments on file in the clerk's office.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to have a public hearing regarding the proposed ordinance 24-007. Before I call that, I don't know that there's a introduction from the administration. I know it's in the packet. It's about the sign ordinance.
It's basically the public hearing to receive and review the comments of the ordinance, to amend the section 3.01.1 bed and breakfast signs, and section 3.02 temporary signage, and section 10.01 sign zone map of the chapter 580 signage ordinance.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing regarding item 4640, public hearing and proposed ordinance 24-004, an update to the sign ordinance. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this ordinance? Any comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 4629, National League of Cities 100th Anniversary.
Well, I guess maybe I'll make comment unless the Manager Robinson, you wish to.
Go right ahead, sir.
So there's a proclamation that's on our agenda this evening. The city of Monroe, of course, is involved with the Michigan Municipal League, but also involved with the, I'll say, the national organization, which is National League of Cities. The National League of Cities is celebrating our 100th anniversary as an organization. We are a member as a city. We participate with the National League of City on opportunities for training, but we also serve on members of council attend the Capitol Conference in Lansing for the Michigan Municipal League. And also we have members that serve on boards and commissions for the Michigan Municipal League. And the training that the league members are sent to is through the National League of Cities. Not all, but most of them are. So the proclamation simply, there's not somebody here to receive it, but they're going to be here on Thursday because they're doing a tour of the country, and they've selected 100 cities to be representatives within their 100th anniversary, and Monroe was one of those 100 communities selected. So they'll be here Thursday morning. Days are getting mixed up, but Thursday morning, and then from here they'll be going to Fenton, which is the other community that's are highlighting in Michigan. So we really should be proud for that as a community, but also as a council. And there's much that they're involved in. Much that we talked about today with clean air, clean water, a lot of infrastructure projects. So the proclamation will be presented to Clarence Anthony, who is the president of the National League of Cities. So just kind of what the proclamation states. I'm not going to read it all, but I know that we'll be recognizing their National League of Cities Day. So that said, I'll pass and move along.
The next item is item 4631, the Opportunity Center at ALCC 2024 Second Quarterly Report.
Thank you. Manager Robinson?
Yes, Your Honor, as I included in the packet is the ALCC's 2024 second quarterly report. Per our contract with them, they do provide us with quarterly financial reports, and this is there for your review.
Thank you. Any questions for the Ford on the Opportunity Center? I know we may have some comments at the end of the meeting by those that were able to attend the annual breakfast, which was last Friday, and it just goes in line with what we heard there about this quarterly report and all the activities at the Opportunity Center at the ALCC and the success they're having in their programs. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item will be the item that was added to the agenda. A number will be given to it after this meeting, but it's the MDOT grant application discussion for the I-75 corridor.
Thank you. Manager Robinson.
Yes, Your Honor and Council, as you're aware through the communications that we've had, we have obviously been involved in this project and the discussions of this project since approximately 2018, dealing with MDOT, et cetera. They did perform a Pell study on this project, and They've had public meetings. The last one, I believe, was last August in February at the National Battlefield National Park, where it was open for the public to attend. We attended that meeting, and they basically came up with two options that they were forwarding to MDOT for consideration. One of the options included an Elm Street, a revision of the Elm Street exit, and the second one eliminated the Elm Street exit. And it was, as they presented this to the Federal Highways Commission, it was determined that having Elm Street redone and continuing to have an exit there it did not have a cost-benefit factor for the federal highways. That was their opinion to MDOT. MDOT had the same opinion. And we were told at that meeting that we were going to have about a year to a year and a half, that there was going to be more community engagement regarding these options, et cetera. Well, a decision was made in Lansing from MDOT that they were going to apply for a mega grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation in the neighborhood of $300 million to bring that federal money into our state to do this project. And the project they were forwarding for this grant was the option that had the removal of the Elm Street exit. Well, we then started dealing with, they asked for a letter of support from us and other partners in the region that would be affected by that, to include the corporations that are in the area, et cetera. We asked for a meeting with the leadership people at MDOT. We spoke to the lead engineer of our region and the person with the Pell study, and we revisited a letter that we had sent in 2019 that was presented by my predecessor here, to where we would be considering of supporting the option that eliminates the Elm Street exit, as long as MDOT would also think about, because there's going to be a change in traffic pattern, and we wanted to make sure that there was still a way for industry, truck travel, and vehicular traffic to come off of the Dixie Highway exit and to help us improve the Detroit Avenue exit, that roadway that leads to Elm. In 2019, they basically told us no, they don't do anything with local roads. Well, when we had our discussion with the group this time, we explained that if you want our support for this grant, we're going to have something from MDOT that's going to help facilitate the traffic flow to that area. And they decided, after looking after our conversation, that they were going to increase their request by approximately $5 million, saying that they were going to use this for assessing the exits, the signaling, and the local roadways that would be affected by this change. And based on that, following the direction that was the city had decided to be in 2019, they basically met what our expectations were at that time. And we did give a letter of support outlining that verbiage in our letter. And we didn't do this in a vacuum. We spoke to all of our other partners with the corporations that we're dealing with there, as some of them were requested for letters of support too. They were reaching out to us, what are we going to do, et cetera. I've shared copies of the letter that was drafted by the mayor to MDOT with all of our partners. They were in agreement with our assessment. The majority of them were. There was a couple that were not, but that is why we submitted this letter, to assist them in trying to bring $300 million of federal money into our state in order to redo I-75, basically the entire roadway from La Pleasance to Dixie Highway, to include the bridge overpass, or the bridge over the River Raisin. And for your review, I included the letter that the mayor authored, along with the freeway interchange work session that occurred April 1st, 2019 in front of council by my predecessor, as well as a letter that was written in 2019 stating what our position was at that time.
quick follow-up, and I'll see if there's questions for the administration. The main portion of this work, of course, was, and where it all started was because the replacement of the bridge over the River Raisin. It's dated, it's beyond its, well, it's just dated. It's time for a replacement. Obviously, the one item also by submitting the grant, and if they receive a federal highway grant, the project will move forward by 1 year sooner. But even with all it was said, and I think Manager Robinson covered it, we're still looking for in the end, it became this, we haven't changed our position from 2019 of the needs that we have as a community, not just City of Monroe, but regionally, because we need access to property that's industrial property east side of the I-75 that is accessible by Elm Avenue. And that's, while the interchange isn't there, if we can find the course to, as we presented in 2019, to be able to have access, that was one of the main discussions. And after further, they responded back the following day and took a different position to be able to achieve what our objective was in that relationship. So I'll just leave that for now. If there's comments or questions from council for the administration regarding the letters, the grant, or otherwise. Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. The only thing that, and I believe in 2019, I was not in agreement with what we basically stated regarding eliminating the Elm Avenue exit, because they didn't give us an option for the Ford property, which could possibly become more reutilized for container traffic or something else. And that was my biggest disagreement with their assessment of eliminating the Elm Avenue exit at the time. But in this, I think it's too late to backtrack. We have to move forward, unfortunately. I don't like the position we were put in, but I don't like going backwards either. And if this improves the timeline, I would expect that MDOT would be helpful in the future with us in furthering projects that would help Monroe beneficially, and not basically just kind of satisfy whatever they feel is necessary. So that's the only thing I'd want to iterate to MDOT, is that I would like them to be a partner, not a pessimist in the project. That's the only thing I want to further with that, because I know that they can be, and I really don't want that to be a problem that occurs in the future with MDOT. So not happy with the results of this, but obviously we can't go backwards. So let's go forward and let's figure out how we can make this work to our benefit, to make the community better, and hopefully not put too much strain on our local traffic while they do the improvements. So that's my only comment regarding that.
Thank you. Other comments or questions for the administration, for Mr. Robinson? Andrew, or Councilman Felder, I'm sorry.
No, I certainly understand how we got to this point. It was certainly made clear to us that this was a possibility from the outcome. And it being cost prohibitive is a real and substantive issue that they're going to have to deal with and overcome. So it's understandable that we are where we are now. As a body that has to vote on infrastructure funding, sometimes we look at the numbers and the answer is just, nope, that doesn't make sense. We can't do that. Let's not move forward with that particular project at this time. I do think that we need to be cognizant of how this affects our strategies going forward, because I think that this is going to have downstream effects on the city's economic development strategies and others. If the Front Street exit is staying, I imagine that is predominantly going to be to facilitate commercial and industrial traffic at the port and other facilities that we have there. If it were for residential traffic, as we all know, the majority of the city's residents live on the north side, not the south side of the river. And so I worry that, because I know that the improvements with the Dixie corridor, where that essentially is going to take place of the Elm Street exit on the north side of the river, and they're going to reroute traffic, and that's where we're looking for the funding and partnership through MDOT. But I do worry that it being an economic catalyst and a gateway into the city, going through Frenchtown, especially as Frenchtown now controls all of the hotels. All of the hotels on the Dixie Corridor are within Frenchtown once we made the swap to get the land for the former Lazy Boy site. So it does have downstream effects on our economic development strategy. One of the assets on the north side of the river that we were talking about, that we're trying to maintain access to, of course, is the battlefield, which we have invested a number of millions of dollars in capital improvements funding over the last several years. Even tonight, we $84,000 for lighting improvements for the parking lot. So we continue to make investments in that facility. I worry that we are at times making those investments more alone than I would like to be. The lack of investment from MDOT for seeing that as an asset in allowing future industrial projects on the northeast side of the river, I think, as Councilman Lamore said, is concerning, as that then has potential economic ramifications on the employment opportunities for our community. But we need to be aware of our economic development strategy and how we move forward if the only exit now leading into the city is primarily going to be used for a commercial and industrial corridor, not for residential or tourism or retail. So just that we're all aware of that and how that's going to have downstream effects and consequences.
Well, I guess as I think back in our conversations, as we started talking about, the possibility of this, the national park uses Dixie and La Pleasance from their signage in I-75 to get to the National Battlefield Park. They do not use Elm, and they do not use Front Street. They specifically use those corridors. It's also the corridor that most people will utilize is Dixie if they're coming from the north, and from the south, some will get off at La Pleasance and then Front. We've had discussion about our downtown and our development in the downtown, and the Front Street exit is the exit that brings the residents into the Orchard East. And we have a development plan for that about revitalization. It's also the Front Street is the main corridor to the downtown. It's the closest than it is Dixie, but many people use Dixie. On economic development, that was our biggest concern, I think, when we had the conversation with MDOT about eliminating Elm, is we have one parcel that's economically, and I'll say industrial property, and it's the property that's at the end of East Elm. There's another business that's down on the east of I-75 as well, and in the marina, and of course there's another location there next to the marina that gets local business mostly, but gets others as well. So I understand the impact of removing Elm Avenue exit, but I don't know, and I keep I get a couple calls, and I'm asking what economic development would there be other than the property that's already used for currently being used. And I guess in our discussions with them is their truck drivers are using Dixie and Detroit to get there primarily because of the condition of Elm. They're hazardous exits as they currently are. They weren't going to change them in the configuration or the design because there's just not space for it. So we tried to find what's the alternative that'll still satisfy what our priority was when we talked to them, is not only just the opportunity for future economic development that's related to that exit, but how do we get there safely? And while we felt that the MDOT had a role to play in supporting that, otherwise it's local roads that are being driven over without support from MDOT. So point is well taken. You remove an exit, that's going to have a drive pattern change. Whether those that used Elm are going to now use Front Street or they're going to use Dixie. So, but points well taken. Thank you. Other comments? So the manager providing it's really an update, and his discussion thought it'd be better through a communication so we can have it here for those that are present, those that will be watching, as well as the council. And kind of how we got here, now it's a matter of we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see if they do receive the recognition from Federal Highway for a $300 million grant. There's a significant match to this. And I want to bring that up because when you read through it's 61 pages long if you want to read the grant application, how to fill it out. And there's parts in there that we, as a city, could have written a grant for this. The county could have, I think road commissions and others could. But I don't know how we could have found a 40% match to $300 million. And some of them are 60%. I'm still trying to determine, is this a rural or an urban grant submission? Because if it's urban, it's a 60% match, which you think about 300 million, so you can do the math and how many millions that is. That's just the kind of the fact of it. I think in having MDOT as the submission of it, they can use their other state funds as the match that we don't have for that. So I guess the alternative was, and Brian, appreciate our Councilman Lamore, is at the end of our meeting as they're getting there, if they weren't going to, make the consideration, it would be done potentially as is, and they could still have removed the exit. So we're trying to, I think, position that we don't lose opportunities. I think opportunities can change. That's a possibility. I can't speak to the future, but are we positioned better with it or without is kind of where we sat. And so we fell back on the discussion the council had on the 2019 in the work session, but also the correspondence that was sent to MDOT by the previous city manager. Brian, you have a comment?
Yeah, David, just quick question regarding the 300 million. That is for the whole corridor, correct? Basically for La Pleasance to Dixie.
What my understanding is, it's not just the bridge replacement and the Front Street exits. It's also the freeway replacement from La Pleasance
All the way
to
to Dixie.
Dixie.
Okay. And of course, there's a $5 million little snippet in there for Detroit
Kind of
Avenue.
a line item where they showed us the language they were going to insert for the language that they were going to ask because of the elimination of Elm Street to assess the signalization and the intersections that are affected by the removal of Elm.
And the assessment of how we get to the corridor on our piece of property that is for industrial development.
I know there's no guarantees in anything, but is this guaranteed, the $5 million, if the 300 million is awarded?
Well, like you said, there's no guarantees in anything. We're dealing with state government. So I would say is as guaranteed as it could because it is written in their grant submission. If they are given that grant, I think that the
If they receive the
funding
300
organization, which is USDOT, will probably want report outs on what they're spending their money on. If there's a line item there that describes that, I'm sure that'll have to be reported upon.
So in essence, it's $305 million. Is that fair to say?
Their estimates were somewhere between what they were asking for, somewhere between 240 and 3 something.
300 to 325.
325, right.
Yeah. So, Councilman, it was a great question. And I will say from our conversation, there was the commitment. Of course, they have to receive the funding from the federal government to meet that commitment. And we'll wait to see as they go through this. I know that it was mentioned that, it came quickly because of opportunity that presented itself for MDOT to take this on and write a grant, but it was a quick turnaround. One of the council members mentioned, I was not pleased at the start because we were told it'd be a year process or more to be able to move forward with both and have a direct conversation with Federal Highway about the other alternative that provided some, I'll just say some closer to what our desires were and some additional items I thought would be beneficial, but it's about $100 million more for that part of it. So that's kind of where it is, and we hear back. Obviously, the manager will bring it back to council of what we hear back from MDOT on their submission for the grant, if it's successful or not. All right. Councilwoman Jeremy.
Do we know when they're going to know about the grant?
It can be as late as the end of the year.
Yep.
I know looking at this, it has the date and when things were due, which is today, but also then we're not probably the only state that's putting in for these kind of mega grants, and then they'll I'm sure evaluate it not only individually on what they have as merit, but also collectively when they start, I'll say not comparisons, but looking at what it's going to serve and how it's going to serve. We just received just before here a copy of what was submitted, and I'm sure that'll be shared by administration for everybody, so you can look at the details of that. It's not 61 pages either. It's much more manageable to read. All right. There's no other questions? Thank you, Manager Robinson.
Thank you.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, and it's item 4584, proposed ordinance 24-004, and an amendment to amend the sign ordinance, and it's up for its final reading.
Thank you. I don't know if there's anything further from I know with not just public hearing, but our discussions on the sign ordinance, the three items that were listed here. Manager Robinson, anything further?
I have no other items to discuss on that unless there's questions from the council.
If there's no questions, a motion would be in order. Councilman Lamore.
I make a motion to place proposed ordinance 24-004, an ordinance to amend section 3.01.1, bed and breakfast signs, section 3.02, temporary signage, and section 10.01, sign zone map of chapter 580 signage ordinance of the Code of the City of Monroe on the floor for its final reading.
Support.
Three of them. So there's a motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Hayter on item 4584, the proposed ordinance 24-004, update on the sign ordinance. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Hayter? Steelgrave? Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 24-004, Chapter 580 signage. An ordinance to amend Section 3.01.1 bed and breakfast signs, Section 3.02 temporary signage, and Section 10.01 sign zone map of Chapter 580 signage ordinance of the Code of the City of Monroe. The City of Monroe ordains.
Shall this ordinance pass?
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Hayter?
Yes.
Stillgrave? Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Next item, please.
The next item is item 4635, authorization to submit grant application to MISTA.
Thank you. Manager Robinson?
Your Honor and Council, the next four items on the agenda are all items stemming from our Economic Development Office. Some of our grant submissions, and some of them, I think it would be nice for us to recognize some individuals and discuss. So I'd call the Director, Mark Cochran, to be able to introduce these items.
Thank you. Mark?
Good evening again. So this evening, we're asking for City Council support to submit a $75,000 grant to MISTA through their My Neighborhood grant program. This program sets aside funds for different categories, and we're still looking at opportunities for the other categories that we can apply to as well. But this particular pot of fund allows for funds to be used to improve public places and public amenities. And so if you haven't recognized 111 East Front Street as a building next to Altrusa Park, it's been under a demolition order that was upheld by the Construction Board of Appeals, and we're gathering proposals right now to complete that demolition because the property owner has been unresponsive. Plus, we understand it has now been foreclosed on by the County Treasurer's Office. And so the city is requesting $75,000 to plan and also make the improvements to the park as we seek to make that more of a public gathering place. As you may recall, last year, in addition to our Thursday concert series in St. Mary's Park, we also have our Finally Friday music program a couple times a month throughout the summertime in Altrusa Park. And so we've identified some improvements from seating to lighting to accessibility for handicap accessibility in the park to make that improvement along the riverfront. And so we're asking for $75,000 to move forward with that project once the building is demolished.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? If not, Councilman Hayter.
I'd like to move to grant the authorization to the Economic and Community Development Department to submit to the Michigan Neighborhood Grant application.
Councilman Hayter, supported by Councilwoman Stilgrave on item 4635, authorization to submit grant application to MISTA. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader?
Yes.
Stilgrave? Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4634, authorization to submit grant application to SEMCOG.
I'll just go to Mr. Cochran. He's standing there.
The next application we're asking for city council support is for a planning assistance grant to do the design for the future Orchard East Greenway Trail. This is the property in between the railroad tracks that runs from the River Raisin down to Plum Creek. This is a project that was identified and adopted in the master plans for both the Heritage Corridor as well as the Orchard East neighborhood to turn that into a multimodal trail, cleaning up that brownfield property. And again, this is just a planning grant to move forward with the design in the future. But having these designs and programs in place help us then to propose these projects to other funders to help move the projects forward for actual construction. But the reason this is a project that we're submitting with MCOG is the regional component to it. By in our bike and trail master plan and the county trail master plan, this was identified as a gap on how we connect from the south side of the city and La Pleasance Road up to the River Raisin into the Heritage Corridor Trail that goes out to the state park. And so this trailway would be an important link in that connector, as well as cleaning up the dilapidated, blighted, and brownfield properties in between those railroad tracks. So again, this would just be to start planning on the final design to hopefully move forward with acquisition and construction on this project for the benefit of the neighborhood and also the region.
Any questions for Mr. Cochran? Mark, if you could add to this, because planning grants from SEMCOG, we're currently involved in partnership with Monroe Township on the La Pleasance Road planning grant. So maybe as a comparison, that's there, and the next steps, as you said, is to get a assistance grant to design, or to, well, I should say implement, I should say.
Yes.
The planning grant, and it would tie to this, correct?
Yes, thank you. So with the Monroe Township project, as I understand it, they're looking at the La Pleasance Road corridor. And this project, although that the exact pathway and design hasn't been finalized, we do identify in the grant application that's been put together that this trail would tie into that trail as well, creating a greater regional connectivity network.
Thanks. And for those that may not know about the La Pleasance Road, I'll go from the outside the city where it starts or ends, if you want to say, is in Bowles Harbor, which is access to Lake Erie, where there's a park there. But as it comes down La Pleasance Road and then into the city, as it crosses over the railroad tracks and past Kentucky, it goes down to La Pleasance Road to where Jones Avenue is. And then Jones Avenue is also part of this planning grant to see how we would modify that and improve that as well. So it goes from Monroe Street on Jones all the way out La Pleasance Road out to Bowles Harbor. That's the current planning grant that we are partnering with, not only Monroe Township, but also the Monroe County Road Commission. And so this is very similar of a grant that we're looking to do because it really makes that connectivity. So there's no questions? Oh, Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll make a motion, authorization to submit grant application to SEMCOG. Move to grant authorization to the Economic and Community Development Department to submit the SEMCOG 2025 Planning Assistance Program grant application.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Jermaine, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 4634, authorization to submit grant application to SEMCOG. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Clerk, next item.
Item 4632, acceptance of Mike and Karen Engen Family Foundation Park and Playground Fund donation.
Thank you. Mr. Cochran.
This one we have on the agenda because we wanted to recognize some members of our staff who have put together this application. Earlier this year, you may remember, City Council authorized us to submit a grant to the Michigan Recreation and Parks Association. And the intent that we applied for was at Boyd Park in the Southwest City neighborhood. It's a conscious effort. It's a priority the City Council has identified, that we have identified, that our parks need to be accessible to everybody of all abilities. And so through the Michigan Recreation and Parks Association, they have a grant program that you can purchase equipment and facilities that help make your parks more accessible. And so we had applied for Boyd Park for, I forget the exact term, but it's a merry-go-round that's accessible for wheelchairs. So when you think about the old equipment where you would get on and spin and run around, this would actually be open, ground level, with pathways and a path around it for individuals with wheelchairs to be able to experience that joy as well. And so unfortunately, we did hear from the Michigan Rec and Park Association that our grant would not be funded. It was not selected for funding. However, on the flip side of that, we heard Mike and Karen Engen were the founders of the Michigan Recreation and Parks Association Foundation, and they personally love the project so much they're funding it out of their own pocket through their foundation. And so I wanted to thank our staff, Brad Willie, Amy Mason, Caitlin McBriarty, who sat down and put together the application, the equipment, the location of the park, why it's needed. That really pulled at the heartstrings of the funding partners on this one. So just wanted to highlight them and also let council know
Thank you.
and accept the grant.
Questions for Mark? If not, a motion would be in order. Councilman Lamore.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd make a motion to accept the donation, authorize the city manager to sign any necessary agreements, and the assistant city manager, finance director, be authorized to amend the budget for the donation.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Felder. Item 4632, acceptance of the Mike and Karen Engen Family Foundation Park and Playground Fund donation. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Hader? Stilgrave? Jermaine?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Clerk, next item, please.
4633, approval of basketball equipment installation at Father Carnes Park.
Thank you. Mr. Cochran.
The next item, as City Council is aware, we just had a great ribbon cutting at Father Carnes Park, opening the park up. And since the beginning of the project, we've heard from the neighborhood and the community that they would like basketball back at the park. And so in response to that, we did start exploring what is the opportunity that we could fulfill that desire. How much would it cost? Where could we do it? What would it entail? And so the proposal that we're bringing to City Council tonight, if you so desire, while we typically don't bring items at this amount back to you because it is a directive that we heard from you to investigate this and move forward, and it's certainly been a topic that's been before you by the public. We wanted to bring it to you for your consideration. This would be one of the 3 tennis courts that were installed, the one all the way to the right closest to, I believe that's Union Street. We would install a basketball hoop at each end of the tennis court. The tennis net would still remain open, so people could play tennis there. If they weren't playing basketball, they're only going to be half court. But it's very easy to intermingle those two, especially since this isn't a location where we would have tournaments and active programs for tennis tournaments. So we wouldn't be taking up prime property like, say, if we were doing at Munson Park or St. Mary's. So it's about $6,000 to purchase and have the equipment installed, and we could do that in the next couple weeks and not do any permanent damage to our new courts.
Any questions for Mark? Councilman Stilgren?
No, I just want to make the motion.
Questions?
Okay.
So this is going to occupy one of the pickleball courts, correct? Or tennis courts?
Tennis.
Tennis.
Yeah.
And there are 3 currently there, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I can see that being all right. Not the pickleball courts though, because I think those are pretty well occupied all the time.
Yes, I would agree. And also, we do have the
Causing all that
ability.
noise, correct?
I'm sorry.
Causing all that noise, correct?
But we do have the wind screens were put up last week at the tennis or the pickleball courts that should help decrease that. Point Councilman Lamore, we do have the ability to reserve the tennis courts too. So if somebody wanted to reserve those 3 for a special event, special program, they will still have the ability to do that.
But we still have the other courts available throughout the city, so it's not like it'd be I can't see that coming into a dire need at this time point. And the basketball courts, I'm gonna say, are probably utilized 24/7 pretty much. I can tell you at St. Mary's Park for certain that they're utilized all the time,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. We like our youth outside and being active outside, so, yeah, I see this as a great thing to do.
Councilwoman Stilgrave.
I'd like to move to allocate $6,000 in funding for the purchase and installation of 2 basketball hoops at Father Karn's Park.
Motion by Councilman Stilgrave, supported by Councilman Germaine. Item 4633, approval of the basketball equipment installation at Father Karn's Park. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Lamore? Felder? Hayter?
Yes.
Stilgren?
Yes.
Maney?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 4644, authorization of free building permit week.
Manager Robinson.
Well, hopefully this comes to good news as our residents, and it becomes inspirational with people that want to do projects in their homes. But we are proposing to offer a free building permit week between May 20th and June 3rd. And attached to the thing, we are requesting, the request was prepared by our official zoning administrator, Lauren Bennis, on the proposed details. And we're hoping that council will allow us to waive the building permit fees for a period of May 20 to June 3rd in accordance with the conditions and procedures as outlined by the building official in his letter that will be available online and to our residents.
Very good. Any questions? Councilman Moore, question?
Just the question would be, so basically they have to have their application in between those dates in order to be eligible to get the free building permit. Okay.
Yes, and once the application is reviewed, they have a period of 180 days in order to commence their
Building or
operation.
whatever their
Yes.
project is.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I have a question. When I looked at this, I've read it a couple times, but do we require permits for fences? Is fencing not part of this then? Or is it something we should be considering? When I look at the list, roofing, siding, windows, decks, porches, sheds, private concrete, I'm thinking, well, some people are right now looking at doing fencing. I had a neighbor nearby, they said, well, they kind of just said, I gotta go get my permit. And I thought, well, maybe that should be on there.
We could add fencing to that.
More than reasonable. I think that'd be a great addition.
Other questions? So if we're looking for a motion, just under the process on number 2, to add fencing in the motion would be appropriate, because it's not in there currently, correct?
Right, to add fencing.
Councilman Moore?
And I do want to just make a quick point that it's not application free, it's fee free. You still have to put in your application, you have to do that. It doesn't mean that you don't have to apply for an application and get your actual permit. It's at no cost.
Permit fee.
Yes.
Is free. There's not one. Okay, I'll stop. Councilman Moore?
Yes, Your Honor, just make a motion to waive building permit fees and fence permit fees for the period between May 20th and June 3rd, 2024, in accordance with the conditions and procedures outlined by the building official / zoning administrator.
Second.
Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Felder, on item 4644, authorization for free building permit week. Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Hayter? Stilgrave? Germaine? Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item.
I have no further items this evening.
That's council comments. It is May, so Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just wanted to make note, our public safety was out helping again this morning down on Front Street. They were busy helping and assisting in an emergency with a mother-to-be, and I believe that they ended up taking the mother-to-be to the hospital in one of the patrol cars in order to get her there very quickly. I don't have all the details on that, but just want to thank our public safety department for their great service to the community, and just another point going forward that they are needed and well appreciated here. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Councilman Felder.
Oh, yes, thank you, Your Honor. I hope that everyone was able to avail themselves of the many events that we've had since last we convened. Founder's Day was this just past weekend. I was able to stop by just for a brief time, and we had some wonderful music acts performing out at the Sawyer Homestead to celebrate that event. The weather didn't quite cooperate during the event. It was a little cold and a little rainy, and turnout wasn't that great. But I think that everyone who bothered showing up, there was plenty of food and plenty of music to go around. The River Raisin Comeback Story. That was a wonderful film, absolutely a wonderful film. A great turnout, almost 300 people. The Commission on the Environment. I mean, the whole thing was really a community effort between the museum and the Cody and in the city. And the film production, what assets we have here in our local media staff and in the production crews that live in our very town. That was something else. I recently attended a Child Care Network event. They gave a presentation on the current state of child care availability and affordability in our community. And I think that they're working with the Upjohn Institute out of the west side of the state to develop strategies across the state to be able to address those issues. I bring this up because we have recently begun a housing strategy. And that was one of the points that came up during the session of when new families are considering new communities to live in. There is, if anyone is aware, a shortage of childcare. I think there's 7 kids for every 1 open slot in a childcare facility. I know that the state is anxiously working with new facilities to get licensed to be able to open up more slots. And then also, when they are available, they seem to be prohibitively expensive. If we can do our small part in listing the number of slots we know to be available in the study area of the neighborhoods that we are examining, I think that in the same way where we do business development studies to lay the groundwork for businesses to move into our communities, I think that we have the opportunity here to do the same thing for young families and do some of that research for them. And I know that we also, something that came up is multi-generational housing options. Increasingly, we're talking about missing middle options, accessory dwelling units, purpose-built multi-unit buildings, duplexes and triplexes, and then, of course, the cottage courts. I think that these are all potential options that allow families to live in the same facility or at least in close proximity in very affordable ways. So I know that we're already looking at some of this, but knowing that that is an issue that we are having to tackle not only here, but across the state and really across the nation as we try and bring new families into our community, but also, be very we want to promote the families that exist here, that this is an okay community to raise your kids in and to have kids in. And to help make that just a little bit easier for people who are struggling with that. That's all I have for this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hayter.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one thing. I want to thank everybody that came out this weekend and either volunteered or participated in the celebration of children at the mall. My God, there was so many smiling kids out there, lots of giveaways. I know my organization brought enough stuff to build, to help these kids build 265 birdhouses. We ran out of every piece of a birdhouse that we brought. Great event. Looking forward to that thing growing even more. And thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was able to attend the annual report for the Opportunity Center, which was very, very good. A lot of people attended to that. And the summer concert series has come out, so you can find that on the website and on Facebook in the downtown Monroe. And May 18th, we're doing Chalk Your Walk, and that is where you can draw on the sidewalks. And there's a lot of specials for the businesses. Also, don't forget that this Sunday is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. And Mark, are you able to give us a little bit of an update on the expansion for the Opportunity Center? Thank you.
Yes. So recently, we've moved past the 50% design phase. We presented the preliminary design, the 50% to the committee, as you and Councilwoman Germaini know, who both serve on that. Got the final feedback, the final blessing moving forward. We also met with the library system, the learning bank, and MCOP, reviewed the project with them, have begun to get some of their final feedback, and we are now moving into furniture, fixtures, electrical technology, and setting up meeting with those vendors and those providers. We intend to have that done by the end of this month, and in June, we plan to have a joint meeting with the City Council and the Citizens Planning Commission to go over the preliminary site plan to move that forward for approval. Still on track to go out to bid later this fall, with construction will not begin until after the election in order to not disrupt the election activities that are planned for Navarre Library in the 3rd Precinct. So we're still on schedule, and we look forward to presenting the final site plan, final design to City Council and Planning Commission together in June. It's getting real. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Councilwoman Germaini.
Thank you, Your Honor. Not only did I go to the movie on Saturday night, it was something to see, and yeah, I agree, it was a great turnout. I'm really proud to be part of the Commission on the Environment, but I'm also proud of all of our residents that pitch in and get dirty and help clean up the river, and it showed me that our community is really proud of all the resources that we have right within our city. So I want to thank all of the community for doing everything they do to help make the river better and make the waterways better. It's because of them that it's possible. And it was a great event all the way around. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lohr?
Yeah, thank you. I just had one more thing to add. I didn't want to forget about this. I noticed that we had 3 members of the Citizens Planning Commission here tonight. I wanted to thank them for being here because that's going above and beyond the call of duty. So please pass that along. I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you, Brian. It's, I guess I'll start there. The members of the Planning Commission are here. It really, items that come on the agenda is follow up to the work they're doing for us as serving on boards and commissions and having input as a residents, and then bringing those forward to assist the council and the administration and the council to approve and move forward. One of the items we talked at Mark gave presentations on a lot of the grant opportunities, and it just shows the hard work that the staff is doing to try to find every opportunity to get grant funding to help pay for how we're going to plan items or implement items to the betterment of the community. And I think there were 4 great examples. I know there's many others that they've written for, and they're tough to get, but you know, and they're not all $300 million grants. In fact, the hard work is those that are in the 5,000 to 50,000, because everybody is writing those. They have staff and doing that. But to get a $50,000 and $75,000 grant that's going to make improvements to our community, I think speaks well for our staff. So my thank you to the administration and all of our staff that worked hard. You know, the River Raisin comeback story, that was just a fabulous partnership right from the go. When you talk about the Commission on the Environment, obviously Councilman Felder was on the Commission on Environment through most of that. He's in the film multiple times, which is great because he had a role, and now Councilwoman Germaini as well. But the county museum held the opening kind of gathering, and then we went to the River Raisin Center for the Arts, and then the film was presented. So everybody asked immediately afterwards, because they saw themselves or saw friends, is when can I see it again? Well, it is going to be available on the city's YouTube channel through the city's website. It's about 45 minutes. Don't zip through to hope to see the friend you know or the person you saw or yourself speaking. Really want to learn the history. I think it was just a masterpiece of the way it was put together, starting with the Native Americans and indigenous people, and what the water meant and what the river meant. And as we talk about the French settlers and how they worked together, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story because you got to watch it. But then the idea is how we got to where we kind of didn't pay attention to the river, and what the comeback story is how we got to where we are today and all that work. Sure, we always have more to do, and there's always going to be things to address. But at the conclusion, the Native American that spoke at the beginning spoke at the end, and I think it was just fabulous the way it was crafted and all the hard work. You watch it because you're going to see a lot of your friends in the community. I think there was over 100 members that were participants, and you'll see them in the credits at the end. So please, I'm asking the community to look at that and see the great work being done by our residents and then our boards and also the film crew and our chairperson Brian Egan and of course his brother through the media corporation. It was just wonderful, a piece of work. Coming up this Thursday, the Labor Museum is having their second annual I'm going to say dinner, but it's the second annual dinner event, and it's in support of our Monroe County Labor Historic Museum. You please contact them. There are tickets available, I believe, still. It's coming quickly. Hopefully, if you can participate and learn about that part, that's actually in the film as well. So just it really covered everything. That was mentioned about Chalk the Walk. I think it's a great fun activity. It is on May 18th, a Saturday from 10 to 4. You don't have to own a business to come down and chalk the walk. There's buckets of chalk and you just pick a place and you start drawing what you want on the sidewalk. I know many communities have registered, but if you want to come down, bring your family, bring the kids, and have some fun chalking the walk. So last item I have is there's so many activities been going on. You could go on, but at the Monroe Public Schools, they had a couple events. One, they did their walk, which was a kindness walk, which was fabulous to see all the youth and the community come out and walk from Arborwood School to Navarre Field and have engagement and questions and good dialogue along the way. So that was very enjoyable, and it was just a couple hours of people's time. The second hour was at the park. But also here in the past week or so was the Generation E, the young entrepreneurs, and it was just a great time to go out to the Monroe High School and see the youth of primary and secondary levels is to show what they do, what they make, and what they're kind of pitching their business. And there were some that were signing contracts and others with those that were interested, and some were simply selling what they had. If you have not been to that in the past, please look for it next year. I think there may be something in the fall. I don't know exactly when it's going to be, but it's the Generation E. I know that our Dr. Everly was one of the judges this year. It's hard to make that choice because the kids are very passionate, and they did a great job of professionally speaking about what they have, what they do, and what they do for the community. So I think I'll stop there for now. Clerk Treasurer Lavoie.
It was a really great weekend, and I too enjoyed the film premiere, and it was nice to be at the museum and then to be at the River Raisin Center for the Arts. So it was a great evening. The rest of my announcements not nearly as fun. Summer taxes will be coming out. Some folks think it's this week, and it generally is fairly early, but we follow charter, which means it'll be the 13th. So those will be in the mail on the 13th. If you would like to pay prior, you won't be able to pay until the 13th, but before you get your bill in the mail, you will be able to go online beginning on May 13th or come to the clerk's office. And I only say that because I'm trying to save you a trip. We're not able to take payment for it until May 13th. So thank you.
Thank you. Manager Robinson, comments this evening?
I have no further comments tonight.
At this time, citizens' comments. If there's comments from those present here this evening, just please step forward, state your name, your residence jurisdiction, and be mindful of your 3 minutes. Any comments from those present here this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Elliot James. I live at 633 Stone Street. One comment is I'm taking applications for voters' applications at Town Square Market every Friday from 3:30 to 6, from 3 to 6. And another thing I want to speak on is the bike trail. you're having a bike trail down to Pleasance. I wonder if we can get a bike trail cut through those woods from the Pleasance to Front Street. And also another T somewhere off of Conant. I talked to the Port Authority, which I got to get back with them again, and I'm trying to get things done. If I can get any help, I appreciate it. I like to have fruit trees put on the bike trail. And I need lights, so I'm gonna have to go to Detroit Edison and give them my pitch. Anything that you can do for me, I appreciate.
Thank you, Mr. James. As we've put in our objectives and has been about our continuation of the trails and non-motorized, really, that's where the funding is coming for filling those gaps between one or the other. That's why we're kind of methodically moving along with, I can see throughout Southeast Michigan, when those get presented at SEMCOG, it could be as simple as a few hundred yards to a couple miles. So I see Mark's writing notes down right now because he'll look at that in relation to an overlay and see what it might be, and we'll see how it goes. But we're always looking for thoughts and ideas to make our trails. Other comments from those present here this evening? Other comments? Motion to adjourn by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilman Stilgrave to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder? Hader? Stillgrave? Jermaine? Mayor Clark?
Thank you all for being here this evening.